So, I've come to learn that social is really important. Everything social, everything else that you think of has a tie to social skills. If you plan on doing anything with any other person in any way, any kind of communication with another person, social skills are important. It's important to be able to clearly express yourself, convey emotions. It's important to understand people's feelings, and it's very important to be able to supply constructive dialogue. However, it seems like too often not in society, in our daily lives, nothing too important, nothing too hard. We don't know what to say always. We have a hard time making good and meaningful conversation and engaging with another person, and we miss out on a lot of their perspectives, a lot of what they have to offer, just understanding them better and understanding ourselves better. We can't do it. We can't make that connection. We can't reap any of the benefits of social skills if we just can't casually talk to somebody. I think it's because we're afraid of what we're going to say. Social anxiety is there's a few different reasons that we may have trouble talking to somebody, but I think social anxiety is the big overall reason. Because social anxiety in general, stems from an inability to read people's facial expressions. Scientifically, that's what they're saying. They're looking at the brain, and an important feature in the brain looks different for people with social anxiety, and they believe that it means that they can't always necessarily interpret how somebody's reacting, how somebody feels, potentially about what they're saying or about just what's happening to that person. So we get anxious. We think that we have to put more existential thought and restriction into ourselves communicating because we're not necessarily reaping feedback that we're okay with. We're not necessarily feeling healthy engagement from the other end. Social anxiety is kind of just like thinking about a future that doesn't exist. It's being too much in your head. It's what a lot of Hindus and different religions would call the monkey mind. It's just chatter in our brain, and it actually can really debilitate us. It can make us not live in the present moment. So, if you want to never run out of things to say with somebody, you just can't. First off, you have to have the confidence to not sleep on yourself, because we are very intellectual beings. We're always thinking, so we could always be communicating. We know a lot, and you have to understand that in any conversation, you could probably offer something of some use. If you're having issues, what I would say is get more engaged with the present moment. Put the chatter aside in your head and really just talk about what's in front of you. Like, too often not, we can't talk about like just the leaves on the trees by us, or just talking about the present moment. Instead, we have to communicate ideas that don't exist because they're not manifesting in front of us. We talk too often about the future or the past, but really, I would recommend, if you run out of things to talk about, revert to the present moment. Because for some reason, you two people are at a certain place at a certain time having a certain conversation. So really understand your guys' ties to the location. Understand your guys' ties to each other in that present moment. And then that will give you so much to talk about. And a lot of times where I think social communication, I think another part of anxiety is we don't want to share too much about ourselves. We don't want to talk about ourselves because we think somebody might not care, or somebody might think it's stupid. But what I would say is you should feel free to openly talk to yourself if somebody's trying to engage you in conversation. And I would actually challenge you to talk about yourself in as much detail as possible. Don't just get people excited about you if you're going to talk about yourself. Really fill them in, really give them details, and it will always give you something to talk about if you're in a silent moment in conversation and somebody's waiting. What are you going to say? Well, you know yourself, so that's always something you can fall back on to relate yourself to it. It's not narcissistic because you're not doing it for self-love. You're doing it to offer something in a conversation. It's a good way. If you're going to extend anything, why not extend yourself to the person? You feel me? Another thing you can do is talk about the world and current events. Not because like politics and different social constructions in the world are the easiest thing to talk about. They're not always like welcome. They're not always what people want to think about. But at least if you're talking about that, you're number one, bringing awareness to the world around you, which is just pure intellect, in my opinion, just a full awareness. You're offering something that's actually happening. And overall, then, you can offer very helpful methods, and I think it can bring a lot of cooperation to world issues or to certain situations if people are more willing to talk about it. So I think it's always a good thing to encourage people to talk about their surroundings and bring further awareness to another fellow person. Don't forget to listen. This is an important one. Part of social anxiety is you're too concerned about thinking about what you're going to say to listen to what they're saying. But if you don't know what to say in a conversation, you can listen, and that will be the best material to respond. You actually have to listen and know what you're going to say. You have to know what you're talking about. You have to know the person's interest. You just have to understand their engagement in the conversation. And the first step to that is listening. That will help you. It all ties together because that will help you be more present in the present moment. That will give you infinite stuff to talk about. If you adopt the perspective that I just gave you, you can put it into practice and you will have infinite things to talk about. You have to understand that sometimes there's certain things people don't want to hear. And there's certain conversations they don't want to have. And you're not always just going to be able to talk about anything. But you can, if you keep your imagination open and you understand the infinite possibilities of dialogue, then you'll better understand what you should be talking about. Social anxiety puts us in our own head and removes us from the actual energy, the actual standing of the current conversation. And once you start paying attention to that, you'll know what to say because you're supposed to be here. You're supposed to be doing what you're doing. Now, if you want to be more supplementive to people, what I can say is work on your vocabulary because society, culture, and ourselves, everything we know, we think with words. We don't think with colors. We think with words. So everything we know is linguistically influenced. There's a linguistic grab on everything. So always be working on improving your vocabulary so you at least always have new words and vivid, explainable ideas to offer to people. Really supplement their mind when you're talking to them. And talk about lifestyle if you have to. Talk about food. Everything doesn't have to be so serious all the time. Everybody eats. Everybody loves food. That's our sustainability. So you can talk about food and, it's also a good way to pass on good nutrition. If you're truly a good person, if you truly know what's healthy for yourself and you eat that way, then you can therefore pass it on to another person. And that's something so much you can offer. Everybody's looking for health. You can always offer somebody health. So I want you to go out and implement this now. Go have some conversations. I love you. Just know that you're good enough how you are, and peace.